Papua New Guinea, and welcome to another episode of Business PNG. The National Development Bank Investments, under a Stret Pasin Incubator, launched a new mobile catering tool, Mealz on Wheels. Toted as being a solution to boost the SME sector in the country, the food carts also aim to address some major impediments in the sector, such as access to market and mobility. The recent launch of the SME policy outlined the government's intentions to grow the SME sector over a 15-year period in the hopes to increase the size of the sector from 50,000 to 500,000, creating 2 million new jobs, reducing unemployment from 84% today to 49%, and contributing 50% of GDP. The policy also identified several impediments faced by the SME sector, including a lack of financial inclusion and access to finance, inadequate entrepreneurship training and capacity building, lack of access to SME support, lack of access to business or commercial land, inadequate access to market and lack of market information, and unsupportive regulatory framework. To address these issues, NDB Investments began developing a range of affordable solutions to give micro and small businesses access to their markets. One of these solutions is the Mealz on Wheels mobile food carts.
We came up with a solution to get SMEs started in business by providing them, affordable alternatives to operating their own businesses. So we've thought about different kinds of businesses and different alternatives that we can offer to them. We did our research and we found that offering them a mobile catering solution such as the Mealz on Wheels, which is essentially a kitchen slash shop caravan that you can tow around with you anywhere you go, would be, a more affordable solution for our people. It's not only affordable, they also have the convenience of mobility. They can set it up wherever is convenient, of course subject to permits that they receive from the local authorities.
This solution is aimed at existing and intending entrepreneurs in the catering and cooking businesses who sell cooked food to their customers. It allows the customers to tow the cart to the desired location and start selling to their customers right away.
Very hygienic. These carts come fully kitted with every cooking utensil that would be required. So it's all powered by gas, so there's clean energy there. So there's deep fryers, there's hot plates, it comes with sinks, it's got a cash drawer, it's got a refrigerator, microwaves, juice dispensers. So it's pretty much equipped to operate. It's essentially a kai bar on wheels that you can take with you anywhere.
NDB have estimated that if a customer were to operate the cart full-time, they can make sales of between 300 and 1,000 kina a day, making between 6,000 to 20,000 kina a month and 72,000 to 250,000 kina a year. Interested customers either have the option to purchase outright or to take out a loan from NDB or the People's Microbank.
We've decided to offer this solution to Papua New Guineans at the most lowest cost possible. So that cost introductory is at 34,999 kina just for the month of June. After that, the price will be at 39,999. So we want to keep these costs below 40,000 because we feel that is the level that small businesses can afford. Because we import these carts from overseas, the value of the kina also affects the pricing of these products as well. So when we have a stronger kina, then we'll be able to sell them at lower prices. So that obviously affects the mix.
Welcome back. One of the country's oldest manufacturing companies, Kingston, says it may lay off some of its 800-plus workers if the pressures of the depleting foreign currency continue in the coming months. While jobs are at stake, the Bank of Papua New Guinea Governor Loi Bakani says importers need to look to cheaper alternatives for imports. Meanwhile, lei manufacturers who are importing are suffering, while those sourcing local raw materials are getting by. Bethany Harriman with more.
In Lei City, one of the country's oldest manufacturing company, Kingston, says it may lay off some of its 800 plus workers if the pressures of the depleting foreign exchange continues in the coming months, while the Bank of Papua New Guinea is dealing with the problem.
I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I'm afraid of the future, and I'm afraid of this foreign exchange situation worsening, and we may be forced to. At the end of the day, if we don't have raw materials, we can't run our factories.
The bank and the government are looking at various ways to address this. Now, this issue of shortage in foreign currency.
Of over the 800 workers Kingston employs, a majority of them are Papua New Guineans, and Chief Executive Officer Michael Kingston says the current situation with the foreign exchange is putting immense pressure on their payments to overseas suppliers.
Approximately 80% of our manufacturing relies on imported raw materials. Probably the only product that doesn't rely wholly on imported raw materials is our Golden Sun cooking oil, which we source locally here in PNG. For all the rest, it relies on imported raw materials.
While other Lei companies have yet to speak out about their challenges, Kingston has spoken out for the manufacturing sector. On the 1st of this month, Michael Kingston said the company is still importing because of good relationships with suppliers.
Well, currently we import approximately 120 tonnes per month of material for tougher tanks, and it all comes from Australia. And the current situation with foreign exchange is putting immense pressure on our ability to pay our suppliers on time. We are testing everyone's patience. Fortunately, we have relationships with suppliers that have lasted for many, many years. We have a deep relationship, but everyone has their limits. And when we are unable to pay on time and we keep pushing payments out, it tests the friendship big time.
Quality raw materials like the plastic product used for manufacturing tougher tanks are being purchased on credit from Australian suppliers because of the lack of foreign currency. Bank of Papua New Guinea Governor Loi Bakani says importers must look for cheaper options.
Over time, importers, if they see the prices of where they're importing, because the low kin are becoming expensive, they can also look at other sources of where they're importing from, much cheaper sources, or even look at other ways of how they can fund their imports, not necessarily relying on the inflows of foreign exchange from the market or even from the Bank of Papua New Guinea intervention, but they have to look at also other sources. This is an adjustment that everybody has to make.
Apart from Kingston, two car dealers have spoken to EMTV off camera. They say they're looking for the foreign currency to import cars and spare parts. For those manufacturing companies who solely rely on imports for their raw materials, they are struggling, while the companies who are getting the raw materials within the country are making a profit.
As I said, and I repeatedly said, the reserves of the country belongs to the country, but the priority is the government. And we are supporting the private sector, like in the case where there is now a shortage of foreign exchange. But it does not mean that we will all support the private sector all the time.
The central bank says they are more focused on government needs for foreign currency, while Lei businesses are struggling with the foreign currency situation.
And to be honest, we've tried to engage with the government, but thus far we've found it very difficult to find anyone who's willing to talk to us and to help us. So we're pretty much dealing with it just on our own. And the way we're doing that is we're having to ration payments and schedule payments and just work within the limits of what we can get from the commercial banks. That means every month there's some suppliers that go unpaid, and our debts overseas slowly get bigger and bigger. It's not for a lack of kina, it's because we can't get the US dollars and the Australian dollars as and when we want.
Commercial banks to arrange their own funding, to fund their customers, provide foreign currency to the customers. They have done it, even for some importers, big importers. They've gone to some, loans from overseas to fund some of their importers. So, but given the magnitude of the inflow, which is very small, it's not sufficient to meet the demand for imports, import payments. This is where we get this issue now with a backlog of orders, import orders in the market.
The bank is also waiting for a formal notification from the International Financial Corporation for additional funds after the IFC disagreed with the private sector lending in the initial proposed structure.
The structure earlier that we worked on was not accommodated within the management of the IFC, so they are looking at changing the structure so that they can make it more comfortable to themselves, to their rules, because they also have some views coming from the IMF and the World Bank Group on such lending to the private sector in Papua New Guinea.
It hasn't come to it yet, but Kingston may lay off workers when the foreign exchange situation gets to a point where raw materials cannot be imported. Some lay companies have already laid off workers.
We're going to do our best to avoid that. The last thing I want is to lay people off, because it'll mean that I've run out of raw materials and I can't supply product. And to me, that's not good for anyone, least of all for the Papua New Guinean consumer, because I think many of the products, most of the products we supply are staples for the Papua New Guinea economy. They're needed, and if we can't supply them, that will create other hardships elsewhere.
Some companies are doing it tough. They're laying off some of the workers, but some of them are really looking at whether they can keep going. And we've got to look at the history of the manufacturers, that they really started in earnest to operate in the 1980s, 1990s.
Now on to some business news from the week. While praising the government in successfully hosting the 8th Asia-Caribbean Pacific Summit, opposition leader Don Polya called on the government to expand the free trade sector. Polya called on Prime Minister Peter O'Neill to consider the inclusion of commodities in the agriculture sector.
Many issues of concern have been discussed among nations in the 8th Asian Caribbean Pacific Summit, which ended yesterday. However, opposition leader Don Polya said the conclusion of issues must have positive outcomes for its country to benefit.
We believe we must have such protection agreements in place to enhance Papua New Guinea's trade and business, not just amongst ACP countries, but also with the European Union.
The opposition leader questioned Prime Minister Peter O'Neill if the government had strategies for better understanding in other areas of trade.
Can we enhance and explore other areas of free trade, not just in tuna, but in oil palm, in agriculture commodities, in other products that our small, medium-scale enterprise in Papua New Guinea are producing?
The Prime Minister responded, stating PNG is gradually advancing and making efforts to allow more inclusion in sectors of trade. PM O'Neill said not only APEC or ACP nations will open trading doors, but also Europe.
Today has got the economic partnership agreement with the European Union. We have that partnership that enables our produce, including fish. It's not exclusive to fish alone. It's not exclusive to tuna alone, Mr. Speaker. It is for all our produce that we produce in our country, having access to the markets in Europe. That includes coffee, cocoa, copra.
Adding on, the Prime Minister spoke highly of the visa on arrival between member nations and the road PNG is following to achieve the UN Sustainable Goals.
Papua New Guinea's coffee export has declined this year following a devastating spell of El Niño which affected farmers throughout the country's coffee growing areas. The Coffee Industry Corporation reports that crop yield dropped in quality to its lowest in history, reducing the amount of exports and coffee beans, attracting lower prices. Amidst this report, the central bank says coffee has done well to contribute to vital export numbers.
The Lei branch of the Coffee Industry Corporation deals with coffee exports out of the Lei ports. The central bank says coffee exports have been good and could help the current lack of foreign currency. Coffee Industry Corporation Senior Export Officer Marie Kiliawi says the numbers show that coffee exports have declined slightly this year. Coffee contributes consistently to foreign currency coming into the country and the local rural families' daily lives.
And the overall for the quarter for last year was over 111,000 bags. For this year, we did only 109,000 bags.
The cash flow coming from coffee is nowhere near to that of the extractive industries. But the central bank has highlighted coffee that brings in vital foreign currency through exports.
Now we're hearing also already that and seeing already that coffee is good, is reacting to that, very good exports. More exporters are selling direct to overseas markets. And of course, cocoa and copra in Eastern Bougainville, East New Britain and Bougainville are very much increasing. So this is very good. It's a positive story.
The coffee industry has suffered greatly this year. A sharp drop in prices because of poor quality brought about by the adverse effects of the El Nino and damages to the Highlands Highway that delayed freight to Loi.
Defects or rubbish that we see in coffee were white and old beans. So it's really because of long storage, and those were the kind of things that affect, the quality. And that was one of the major things that we see.
Coffee may not be exporting billions of dollars, but during times like this, when world prices of oil, gas and minerals have slumped, coffee does become significant. Coffee as a cash crop alone contributing to the entire Papua New Guinean agricultural sector that doesn't generate billions of dollars in revenue. But given the support it deserves over time, it will reach its full potential. And someday the agricultural sector will be able to mitigate losses acquired from the slump in world commodity prices affecting oil, mineral and gases.
The Pacific Maritime Industrial Zone project in Madang will not begin operations as planned. State Enterprise and Public Investment Minister William Duma says this comes as a loan of 900 million kina has been put on hold by the Exim Bank of China.
The State Enterprise and Investment Minister came under scrutiny in today's question without notice session in Parliament. Minister Duma was grilled over the 900 million kina loan from the Exim Bank of China. Deputy Opposition Leader Sam Basil probed into the alleged use of 12 million kina for fencing and the 18 million kina used in clearing coconut plantations.
For the benefit of taxpayers, can the Minister assure this House that his department, if possible, can engage a forensic audit team to verify the use of the Exim Bank loan? We believe that 300 million kina US or 900 million kina that was spent so far for the PMIJ project before committing the taxpayers yet again to another loan that is still under process, I believe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
When responding, the State Investment Minister indicated that the project will see a slowdown of events following the withdrawal of the 900 million kina loan.
Nothing had been done, and the time period that was allowed for the government to draw down the funds lapsed. So